Okay, it's Garnet and Neuralite, Practical Guide for Beginners. I'm on page 3, second section, Neuralite and Sound Compositions. Okay. It may be obvious or not, but the light and the sound are totally integrated in the composition style with the Neuralite. This is another big topic, but I'm going to try to squeeze it down to these 10 minutes or so. Some of us know about brain entrainment. There are light sound processes and devices that work with brain entrainment. I call this brain engagement, not brain entrainment, brain engagement. Brain entrainment is used, some small percentage in the composition style, but my effort here is to either work more or less like telling a story or exploring a feeling. And this is done in a way where one thing leads to another. I'm not going to break it down technically, but the understanding here is that the sound aspect is not just some nice music, not at all. Although it may sound musical, it's never a full composed piece of music. I don't want that. I use the ambient sounds and musical interludes as what's called mood framing. And some of it may be apparent, a lot of it isn't, but most of the sound elements in the composition aspect of an experience has 4, 5, 6 oftentimes layers of signal modulation. Even the sounds themselves, whether it's a stream or some kind of musical phrasing, even those are modulated at certain frequencies. So the sound element is not just nice music, because I want the sound and the light to be working towards that same vectored principle. They're working towards a particular kind of messaging. If you know how to signal the brain, you can message the mind. The light and the sound are integrated. So it's hugely different. It's not integrated like some of the fundamental brain entrainments where whatever the pulse of the light is, then the sound pulses at the same rate. That's pretty basic stuff. It can create sustained narrow brain states. I think they're probably closer to trance states than they are to learning states, frankly. So the analogy I oftentimes give for the light sound compositions idea here on page 3 is that of a rock band. I talk about this in other places, but this might be your first time to go through the guide. 4-piece, or basically 4-piece rock band. The sound provides the information more or less like the drummer and the bass player. And the light is like the lead guitar and the vocalist. Now, if you were to record those 4 people on separate tracks, and you listen to the vocalist, the singer, and you're listening to the drummer, those are radically different sounds. You may not even recognize they're connected to the same song. But when you put them together, most famously, the saying comes, the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. That the integration, the compositional harmonies, the vectored relationships of the drummer, the bass player, that's the sound, more or less, holding things together all the time. That's what the sound is doing. And allows the light to go into a lot of creative, more complex, accenting, almost commenting on the basic elements of what we'll call the song, not to confuse it as music. So the Neuralite has light sound compositions. The light and the sound are meant to integrate but not replicate. And some of the compositions are more like telling a story, a little bit more linear. And some of the compositions are more like exploring a feeling, a little bit more circular or non-linear. So appreciate that there is I have to admit, some really, not because I did it, but some very elegant compositional devices that are used, and that these are very engaging to the brain. You have to think, what makes a good movie a good movie? What makes a good story a good story? What makes music attractive? That it is more than just the frequency following response going over and over and over again. It's more than just sort of, sweetening it up with some sounds. It actually has to make sense, because music is the way it is because our brain is the way it is. We like certain kinds of stories because that's how our brain makes sense of nonsense. That's how meaningful comes out of meaningless. That's the Neurolite. Neurolite Practical Guide for Beginners. That's page 3 in the index and page 3 here in your document. So appreciate the compositional style and the way that light and sound are integrated harmoniously to engage your brain in either telling a story or exploring a feeling. It's fascinating. Thanks.